National Catholic Register. This is Register Radio, bringing light and clarity to the news and topics that affect your life.
A conflict between the U.S. Bishops' Conference and the Trump administration over immigration caught the media's attention earlier this week, but such tensions aren't isolated to the Church in the United States or Trump policies or even the current political moment. EWTN News contributor Alberto Fernandez gives us a broader, more global perspective on the Catholic Church and issues of migration. And on another policy issue, one where the U.S. bishops and the current White House are in agreement, President Trump expanded school choice. That decision came during Catholic Schools Week, and we take a look at how to preserve the biggest blessings of Catholic education. I'm Jeanette DeMello, host of Register Radio. I'm joined by Matthew Bunson, my co-host on Register Radio, and EWTN News' vice president and editorial director. And there in studio in Washington, D.C. is Shannon Mullen, the National Catholic Register's editor-in-chief. On the phone, we have Alberto Fernandez joining us. He's a former U.S. diplomat and a contributor to EWTN News. So talking about immigration, President Trump has initiated numerous executive actions on immigration in less than 2 weeks. His policy is centered on deporting unlawful migrants. It's also an attempt to end birthright citizenship, securing the border by sending troops and turning away asylum seekers, and also halting the refugee resettlement program. And everybody's been watching this, if you're watching the news. But this also comes amid a myriad of other executive actions unrelated to migration, upon which the Catholic Church has offered a lot of praise. Things like his executive order on restricting transgender surgeries, or his expansion of parental choice that I mentioned in the intro. But of course, on immigration, we've seen tension. And the media has paid a lot of attention to this, and it puts us Catholics in a strange place. So that's where we have Alberto, who wrote a wonderful piece at the Register, to join us and kind of put this in perspective. Alberto, thank you for being on the show again. And can you describe this, what I would just call a skirmish between the Bishops' Conference and the Trump administration?
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on with you. Yes, it's obviously the issue of immigration was an issue in the political campaign. It's an issue in the United States. It's been that way for years. And what's happened, of course, is these executive orders were launched, and there's been pushback from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and other prominent Catholic individuals and officials. And of course, it's a complicated issue because, of course, you just mentioned it's not about immigration, right? It's about immigration in as a principle, as an issue. It's about illegal immigration. It's about the question of the right to asylum. It's the question of who pays for what. So there's been a lot of conflating, the way I see it, a kind of conflating of both supporters of the administration and of critics of the administration on this, on what is an extremely broad, multifaceted topic.
Yeah, Alberto, you say multifaceted, and it's just not a binary choice. You're either for immigration or against it. There's so many different levels to this. You touch on one of those levels, which is in the global, from a global perspective. Migration, you say, has become a weapon in hybrid indirect warfare waged by some nations against their neighbors. What are you talking about there?
Well, it's actually something that's been going on for a while. The most famous example from long ago, of course, was the so-called Mariel boat lift in 1980, where the Castro regime opened the spigots to allow people to flee Cuba and also pushed the criminal population, literally took people out of prisons and insane asylums and shipped them off to the United States. Castro was an early adopter of something that we see today. It happens with Turkey and the EU. It happens with Belarus and Poland. It happens with Morocco and Algeria and Southern Europe, where these regimes also happens with Cuba and Nicaragua as well, where these regimes open and close migration channels, manipulate who is going to be sent, to put pressure on others. So, for example, a couple of years ago, we had Morocco open the border with Spain, with the Spanish region in Africa. 10,000 African migrants crossed over within a day. The Spanish government then gave up some issues that the Moroccans were concerned about. The Moroccans then closed the border again. That's a perfect example of weaponizing migration flows, or using them as a tool or a weapon to get what you want in other fields, either change in policy or money or something else.
Yeah, Alberto, in your column at NCRegister.com, the heat on immigration is not unique to Trump or America. You write that for ordinary Catholics who are not deeply partisan, the contours of the debate can be bewildering. There is on both sides a conflation of selective reading of many contending arguments and issues, and we've been talking about some of those. But you offer some solid sources for better understanding the teaching, but also this word of caution. You basically say, don't be myopic. I know Pope Francis has talked about the global phenomenon of mass migration. This is happening across the globe. So why is it so important to have this wider view?
I think it is because we're called upon to be kind of aware of the complexities of these issues, and that there is a concept of ordered charity, and there is a concept of goods, things that are good, welcoming people who are hurting is a good thing. Helping your country, helping workers, helping your family, these are all good things. So we all too often see people in kind of high moral dudgeon take one element of something or the other and play it out in a way which is kind of unrealistic, and we're called upon to have our eyes wide open. For example, there's a kind of given, and there's scientific proof that unlimited immigration hurts workers, especially lower earning workers. That's established. That's not a question of debate. It's not a question of theology. So you have to weigh the question of that's why someone like Cesar Chavez was very much opposed to unlimited immigration. So you have to weigh the issue of workers in the United States. You have to weigh the issue of immigrants or coming in as well. That doesn't mean you're against one or against the other, but that there are contending goods that exist that have to be weighed with prudence. And we're called to exercise prudential judgment on everything we do.
I really do love the way you summarize the church's position in your article, Alberto, that we can find at ncregister.com, because it does a few things. It tells us that it is a myriad of things that the church is looking for. It is concerned about law enforcement. It is concerned about human dignity. It is concerned about national sovereignty and workers' rights. It's really concerned about all those things that doesn't always make it to news and to the sound bites, and nor to us Catholics in the pew. So you suggest some things to look at, to get to read, to understand what the church is teaching is. And I think that's very important for us as Catholics, to educate ourselves on what the full position is that we're not going to get in the sound bites that we hear, or these little skirmishes that make it to the news. You also put some context, I think, that is important. You mentioned a few examples and historical examples of the messiness of immigration policy and when it could be weaponized or whatnot. But right now, the United States is definitely not the only place that has immigration front and center. It seems to be there's this contention over immigration across the world, and the church has a strange place. In different places, it's saying somewhat different things. Help us to understand the global realities right now.
Well, I think the church is doing the right thing in that there are realities on the ground in different places, right, that affect what one with prudence, with careful judgment, decides to do. I mentioned in the piece that it's actually very interesting that from Canada to Germany, in the past, say, 6 months to a year, the issue of immigration has become a much bigger issue. But not just that, it's become a bigger issue where the demand in these democracies, in Canada, in the UK, in France, in Germany, and Italy, has been towards wanting, you could say, a harder line, or the sense that things have gotten out of hand, that the numbers coming in are too big, the ability of states to absorb them is too limited. And that's in liberal democratic countries. That's not Trump. That's not America. These are kind of Western liberal democratic states. And by the way, some of them leaders who have criticized the Americans for building the wall and all of that, Trumpian kind of stuff, let alone in the third world where you have the issue of south-south migration, where you have poor countries that are being overwhelmed by people from poorer countries. And there's been pushback, and sometimes, to be frank, brutal, violent, corrupt pushback from countries, from whether it's South Africa or whether it's countries in the Middle East. So we're living in a world where migration is a huge issue, and we should look and see that it is not, as Americans, we are often, it's all about us, right? And on this topic, both sides are making it all about us.
Right.
Whereas actually it's a global issue with lots of baggage.
Right. So I think the one important thing is to turn down the heat a bit and to look a little wider. And I'm so grateful you've done that in your column. And I know we'll keep talking about this on Register Radio. You're listening to Register Radio on EWTN Radio. Next, we'll be talking about the blessings of Catholic education. And I'll share a bit of my own story related to Catholic schooling. Stay tuned to Register Radio here on EWTN.
Let's return to Register Radio on EWTN.
Welcome back. I'm Jeanette DeMello, host of Register Radio, together with Matthew Bunson, EWTN News' Vice President and Editorial Director, and my co-host. Shannon Mullen is joining Matthew in studio, and we have a guest with us, a Register columnist, Susanna Spencer, on the phone. But, before we get started into a very important topic of Catholic schools, which I teased in the last segment, I want to talk about some changes to the show that actually relates to educating my own children. I guess over the last year, I've realized just how much my elementary school-age kids need my attention and have felt the tug to pull back from day-to-day editorial work at the Register. And that's been happening over this year when Shannon Mullen took the reins as editor-in-chief and has really been doing a great job in the role. And Matthew, with his role on Register Radio, always having my back and always taking the show when things got complicated for me, I have finally just seen the light and said, I need to step down as host and start focusing a bit more on some things at home. And that is going to come very soon here, where I can focus a little bit more. And so Matthew and Shannon, I am so grateful to be handing this off to you, Matthew, with your leadership. And so here you have it. I'll come on here and there.
it's bittersweet. It's a heartbreaking departure, but I'm so glad that you're able to do this for your family. But you've been hosting now for a long time. How long has that been?
It's been more than a decade. So I've been at the Register for 12 years. This year will be 13. And I think within the first year or so, I started to join Dan Burke on Register Radio, and after some time took over. So yeah, it's been a really long time, and I've loved it, every minute of it, actually.
Well, and that's always translated. You can tell how much you love the Register, how much you love EWTN, how much you love your faith, and how much you love Register Radio. I remember being a guest for the very first time about a decade ago, long before I joined EWTN. It was you and Dan, and I remember thinking to myself, boy, these two are having a lot of fun.
Yes, we did have a lot of fun, and so that is what makes this a challenge. But as I said, it really relates to my kids and just the realization that I need to put a little bit more time into the home and their education. I'm still with EWTN News, and I'm so grateful for that. But it's been an opportunity, and EWTN News has given me a chance to do this with a new title, working as a Strategic Initiatives Director, and I'm doing some really fun stuff. One of it relates to you, Shannon, as the Register nears its 100th anniversary. We're working to put the entire archive of the Register online for our readers, and that's going to be an opportunity for everyone, and I get to work on that, and that's going to be a big part of my new position. So super grateful to be in this moment, but also a little sad, as you said.
Yeah, I can't have this episode go out on the air without just thanking you for everything that you've done for the Register, everything you've done for Register Radio, your leadership, your vision, your patience, your goodness, and it has been a privilege and a joy to work with you. And I know you're not really going away, and you're going to be, from time to time, you'll be back on Register Radio. You know, we're all counting on that, both all of us who help prepare this, but also who listen to it.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
A big amen and a thank you from me too, Jeanette. It was really this show and you who put the Register kind of in the back of my mind, got it on my radar many years ago. So thank you for that.
Awesome. I appreciate you both, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you would do with this. So let's bring our lovely guest, Susanna, on. Susanna, you know, I wanted to have you on, especially for this show, because one of the things that I have done is begun to homeschool my kids 2 days a week. It's a hybrid program that I'm loving. It's a classical program. And I read your column last year for Catholic Schools Week that talked about you deciding to put your kids into the parish school after many years of homeschooling. And so we're sort of at different moments in our educational journey with our children. So I thought you were a great person to bring on for this segment and to talk about what it is that you want to provide your kids through Catholic education, whether it's homeschool or in school.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. Yeah, and as you were describing your decision, I was thinking, you know, it is so unique to every family, the decisions we make for our children and what they need individually and what we need as parents, because we're all different people and we all need different things. And so it was just neat to hear your experience of making this decision. And when my kids were younger, especially in the younger elementary years, and we had everyone at home, like right now I've got a 10th grader, an 8th grader, a 6th grader, and a 4th grader. But when they were all like 6 and under, it was such a gift to be able to just be at home with them and have that time with them. And it was hard every day because it's hard having your whole day be little kids, but it was also such a gift, and it laid this foundation for our family. And I guess your question of, you know, what do I want for my children and their education is just, I want them to be, you know, who God created them to be. And I want them to get to heaven. And as I've thought about education, and my husband and I have this shared vision of a Catholic classical education for our children, I just was realizing that I couldn't meet their needs personally with our homeschool curriculum, and we needed to bring in more of our community to help us, which a co-op is an option like you're doing, or going into this school that we've that's a part of our parish and choosing to join that community more fully than we had when we were just parishioners.
And can I follow up, because I think what you are finding at your school is really awesome. I mean, it's very unique. It's actually a parish kinder through 12th. That's not very common. So a unique opportunity there. But it also has classical education as a focus. What are some of the things that are related to the classics? What would that mean for a parish school, classical education?
So I think the first thing they think about in the classical education there is just teaching them Latin, which is, I mean, Latin is such a huge part of the Roman Catholic tradition. It's, the language of the church. All of the, doctors, a lot of the doctors wrote in Latin. And then even now, even though we can have Mass in the vernacular, Latin is always present, within the liturgy. And just the children growing up being familiar with it, how to pronounce ecclesiastical Latin, and then the meanings of the words and seeing how they fit into the English they speak as well. And then another aspect that the school uses is just when you are grounded in the classics that draw on truth. So we call them classics, like, the ancient Greek, Roman writings, and then kind of up through medieval times, and then, the kind of the truly Catholic aspects of more modern philosophy. Like when you bring all of that in together, it's, the church has the wholeness of truth in it. So the classical education fits perfectly side by side with that, or even incorporates into it. And so then I'm trying to, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've noticed that myself. And, I'm going to bring Shannon Mullen into this, because at the Register, we have followed for a long time this sort of advent, a recent new advent of classical education that's really keeping schools alive in a big way, and so and kind of rebirthing education, Catholic education. It's not the only thing. And so, Shannon, I want to turn to you, because in the Register's last print edition, the January 26th print edition, you guys cover Catholic schools, and you have a story you have Susanna's column, and you also have a story about this kind of rise of classical education and how it saved some schools that were failing. But you also have a fun story, Shannon, about your alma mater. And this is a way that a school, again, kind of had a different sort of rebirth. It has to do with buses. So what happened at your school?
Yeah. Since the pandemic, people don't realize this, but there was transportation costs shot up for schools all across the country. There was trouble getting bus drivers and fuel costs and everything. So my school, Del Barton School in Morristown, New Jersey, bought its own buses and trained its own drivers. So it was a great story of kind of thinking outside the box. We like to do that at the Register to give other schools and dioceses ideas, that they can try. But Susanna, I wanted to turn it back to you briefly. First of all, I'm recently finished a 20-year journey with homeschooling. So we could turn this into a 3-hour Joe Rogan style conversation between us. But you have this piece, 7 things your children's school can do to promote its Catholic identity. We don't have time to go into all 7. Talk about a couple that really would be helpful for our listeners to be aware of.
Yeah, well, it was when I started, I made a list, and I thought, I'll just send this over to, the dean in the school and kind of see if I'm missing anything. But he came back with the teachers making their oath of fidelity to the teachings of the church. And for me, as a parent, I was like, the things that I hear my children say to me every day when they come home from school. My daughters, who are in 8th grade and 10th grade, they're like, I went to the sisters' chapel before lunch, today. I like to go there before lunch because the lunch line is long and I don't want to wait in it. I'd rather wait with Jesus, just kind of things like that. And then my 4th grade son, their classroom is in the same hallway as the sisters' chapel. So the convent attaches to the school, and the sisters share their chapel. We have Dominican sisters, the Sisters of Mary, Mother of the Eucharist, that their mother house is in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so they share the chapel. So my son has one of his classrooms right next to the chapel, and they go there multiple times a day just to spend some time before the Eucharist. And I think just those things of fostering personal prayer, above and beyond the school masses that they have. Like the liturgy is the most important thing we do in worshiping God, but getting to know Jesus personally is a thing I don't know that Catholic schools have always fostered over the years in America, and I think that's a real unique part of the restoration of Catholic schools, is that children are learning. I can go before the Eucharist and talk to Jesus.
Absolutely. It's such a beautiful opportunity, and I think every Catholic school can have that effect on kids if they really place Christ in the center. And I love when I hear about conversions taking place through Catholic schools, because people go there for education but end up just loving Christ through the Eucharist. So, Susanna, I am so grateful for your story. You mentioned the Dominican effect, because your school is run by Dominicans, and we have a story like that, about that at the Register, ncregister.com. It's called The Dominican Effect on Catholic Schools, and I invite all of our listeners to go to NC Register, check out the Catholic school stories, check out all of our stories, and as always, stay tuned to Register Radio. Remember, for more news, analysis, and commentary, check out the National Catholic Register online. Thanks for joining us on Register Radio here on EWTN. Until next time, not sure when that'll be, I want to thank my producer, Michael McCall, my co-host, Matthew Bunson, my new host, Shannon Mullen. I'm Jeanette DeMello, and I pray that God bless you.